Welcome to Stories from Site, the podcast for renovation enthusiasts. I'm Amy Donalik, and together with my co-host Jane Middlehurst, we chat with home renovators about the rollercoaster that is renovation. This week we sit down with Vikkie, a DIY renovator and YouTube educator who takes us through her step-by-step journey of transforming an auction-bought property into a dream home. Whether you're tackling your first renovation or you're a seasoned pro looking for fresh inspiration, this episode is packed with practical tips, relatable struggles, and plenty of motivation for your next project. Welcome to Stories from Site, Vikkie. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
We would love to know about your renovation. Do you want to start from the beginning?
Yeah, this is our third renovation. So we are living in a property bought at auction in September 2023. If you asked me if I would have done this property 2-3 years ago, I would have just freaked out, because the reason this was in auction, it's a 4-acre farm and there is the original 1800s cottage.
Wow.
This is a late 1980s to 1990s build. 2 of the ceilings were gone. There were no water on, because the reason the ceilings were missing, the place had flooded due to burst pipes. So there was a lot of cosmetic work, plasterboard to replace. And it was all overgrown and nobody were interested. Luckily, because it were an auction, people didn't want to pay the fees, and that was a very scary process for us anyway. But nice little excitement. I thought, I could do this. I've done this. A lot of this with my dad. So yeah, we're pretty much camping, but we're enjoying it.
Go back to right at the beginning. What did you find so compelling about renovating?
So in 2014, we were renting. My parents always said rent was dead money. And my dad's second generation to a timber yard, but he is a skilled cabinet maker, joiner, and a carpenter. Their side hustle has always been renovating, flipping houses. Now, I wasn't interested in any of that, but when I went to university and went out in the real world needing to live somewhere, I did rent for a while. And yeah, renting was a bit of a shock. I was a bit spoiled, I suppose, but that's when I felt the need to do something up. So I didn't want to pay rent anymore. We were saving up, really scrimping and saving for a deposit. And in 2014, that's when properties were starting to fly off the shelves, so to speak. And I panicked and said to my husband, we can't be renting forever. Properties are getting more and more expensive. So we managed to save up for a deposit. And I looked everywhere in the Midlands. My parents kept saying, if you buy a council house, it might not go up in value. Don't buy a new house. That won't go up in value. You're better off trying to find the worst rundown property in a nice area. I did, with little to no knowledge of how to do anything. I never showed an interest in my parents doing DIY. I just saw them turn around houses and sweat, and I deludedly thought, well, all it takes is a bit of hard work, no knowledge. I had to learn everything from scratch, filling walls, tiling, and it just started off very, very slowly, just baby steps. And the more I had jobs to do, I turned to YouTube. I didn't want to bother my parents. My dad is 72 this year, and he still hasn't retired. So I didn't want to be ringing him up. I researched something to death. Once I've got tricky questions, then I'll ask my dad, I've seen people do this on YouTube, or I've seen it online. Is this proper? And often he would say, that's actually done wrong. The brace on the door, a shed door or gate door or whatever, is going the wrong way. And I thought, wow, you've got to take what you see online as a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
One of his friends is a building inspector, and so that was always useful. And bricklayers, and because he's in the trade and sells to people in the trade, he's always got tradespeople around him anyway. So he's been a great source of information, as well as my father-in-law, who I used to get a lot of my information right from the start, because he used to do groundworks for lots of different companies on contract. So he helped build Meadowhall, car parks and things like that. He was an engineer. So it was just so useful to have all this information rather than have to go online to look stuff up. I could just ask them. And a lot of people don't have that. So I just started paying it forward, showing my struggles, showing what I did online.
You have 128,000 followers. That's paying it forward, and I mean, it's exploding, really, isn't it? Are you enjoying that side of it?
Well, I must admit, I am a bit addicted to Instagram at the moment, but my heart has always been with YouTube. That's how I started. The thing I love about the Instagram side of things is I'm opening these more technical, complex projects to a different audience because they don't, I tend to find they don't cross over. Somebody who's interested in short form content isn't necessarily interested in the longer form, but I'm not a massive fan, I must admit, of quick, short projects that don't show you how to do something. They're not that helpful. So I must admit, I love saying, if you think it's too fast, here's my YouTube version where I talk about every nook and cranny about it. I almost want people to go through that suffering journey that I've had to do, going through the rules and regulations on how to install a lintel for a chimney breast and, to open it out. But I'm a visual learner, so I have to follow people's YouTube videos. So if YouTube didn't exist, oh God, that would be so gutting. I think there'd be less renovation. There'd be much slower renovations. It's such a great service because I guess more now than ever, the price of doing renovation works is so expensive and material costs are so high that it does make sense for people to get going themselves. But there is that barrier to beginning because it feels so nerve-wracking, I guess, to actually get started. So way back, maybe 2-3 years prior, I was doing food recipe videos. I've got a food blog called tastefullyvikkie.com. I used to do maybe 2 recipes a week on my YouTube channel in this renovation home. I used to get slated of, why don't you think about cleaning your kitchen? It's not dirt, it's somebody's old paint or something like that. You just couldn't get it off. And I thought, I'm not having this unrenovated home stop me doing what I wanted to do, because at the time we'd just moved into the property and it was my release, trying to break away from the renovation. But my husband's always says, why do you keep telling people this story? But it did happen. He said, if you put as much energy into renovating our house as you do on your YouTube channel, we'd have a house done by now. And it hurt a little bit. And I thought, maybe if I compromise, I start documenting some of the videos. I thought maybe I could earn something. But actually, it paid me back in so many dividends. I had loads of people coming back to me to say, you could do it like this. Tradespeople. Occasionally, I might get somebody slating me, but it didn't happen as much as I thought. I found my journey from a novice's perspective actually helped other people, and they were more interested in me messing up, how I overcome challenges. And I didn't, for years it took me to realise that that's what people wanted to watch. They didn't want me to edit out the mess ups. And with this auction property where there's been a lot more challenges, I've kept all of that in, because if you cut out all of the struggles, they're not going to see the true feeling of what it was really like. If you've really suffered trying to do hours or days, months of research, and you just condensing it down into a 5-minute video, I did this and I did that and done that, bye. I think it's a disservice to yourself.
Yeah.
They can go along on the journey with you.
But also, I guess it's a disservice to them because it's so easy to see those quick reels and think, oh, okay, that's easy.
Yes,
and then be
absolutely.
halfway through a job and think, oh my goodness, what have I done? And you're right, you're taking people on the actual journey, which is like renovating is tricky. You need a lot of patience. That's why YouTube's so great, isn't it? Because it's step by step. You can just follow the instructions. It's amazing.
Yes, yeah.
How does it work with the renovation? Do you outsource anything? What's your take on that?
Well, we're not in a property with gas anymore, but if we had a gas boiler, things that legally require people, absolutely. I'd be getting a plumber, and we got an electrician to update the consumer unit because I'm not legally allowed to touch it. We all need some basics of how to wire a plug or, how the wiring system works. But I'd still get an electrician to do key things like that. If it came to things like underpinning, I'd be getting people in for things like that. Or massive projects like installing a massive window. I'll be doing this in the next few weeks. I've asked my dad to supervise because my dad is brilliant because he's been doing sheds and fencing for over 50 years. He knows how to get something square within minutes, and it might take me about 2 hours to work out where to pack something up. But I'll be doing double glazing with him soon.
Wow.
I've done things like that in the past with him, but only little windows. I'm turning dated old plastic windows into French doors, and I'll be cutting the brickwork. I've cut the brickwork on 2 projects now, on an internal wall that already had a window above it and my fireplace. So those are little projects leading up to this bigger thing. But I still want him there just in case, because obviously a tradesperson will know a lot more that can go wrong. Like when you put a batten as a straight edge to mount to the wall so you can use it as a guide for your disc cutter. It's important that you're cutting on the right side. You cut on the outside closer to the good bricks. If you slip, you've got to replace some of the bricks. I want to cut on the inside of the batten where the bricks are going to be demolished. And if I slip, it doesn't matter because those bricks are going to go anyway.
Whoa.
So there's a lot of little details that you've got to look into of what could go wrong.
It's experience, isn't it?
It's trying to find the right tradesperson that's sharing all the information online. And are they going to share all the tips and tricks? Do they even have the time? Because sometimes it makes me wonder, do they have a good business model? Because surely a good tradesperson is inundated with customers. They don't have time to be filming stuff like that. My dad wouldn't be filming his stuff. When I wanted to create a website for him, because I used to think, come on, Dad, you're in the dark ages. You don't even have a website. I don't want a website. I'm too busy.
You just don't need it. That's quite often
Exactly.
a sign of a good contractor. Well, I was interested in, Vikkie, you said you bought the house in 2023. How far through the works are you? What have you managed to do already and what have you got to go?
It's definitely so easy to forget because it still looks a hole, really. It still looks really, really dated. Everything is done very, very slowly, really, because I'm documenting it all. But the first thing I had to do was get the water up and running, because when we moved in, there was a reason why there was no ceiling up there. And we had to find the leak, if you like. Where the plasterboard was missing, I could see some of the pipe lagging it was missing. I quickly found out it's a bit wobbly here. This has got to be an issue. So I managed to face my fears, climbing up into the loft. I knew I'd be able to fix the pipes. But when you're in the thick of it, I just forgot about it and just got it done.
Do you have a plan before you start? Do you think, okay, we need to do this, this, this? Or is it more just like, it's so urgent that it's like, okay.
Well, the early days, it was so urgent. But I suppose our plan is we're constantly talking to each other what needs to be done next in order. And we'll talk about, well, if we do it like that, I won't be able to get that done. I need to take the skirting boards off before I install the flooring, that kind of stuff. So I suppose in my mind, I'm constantly throwing hypothetical obstacles, thinking about risk assessment and constantly thinking of in what order we need to do this. And once I've got an idea of, oh, this needs to be done, I'll research something to death. If I do have to draw a plan out, I'll draw a plan. I'll go onto SketchUp and build the chimney breast brick by brick, for example, and try and dissect it of which brick should I be removing to put the lintel in. And I do it in so many different ways. And because it's the third house, some of my skills are probably more advanced than when I started out in 2014. So some jobs are just nice and quick, which I don't have to plan as much. But it's new territory, things that I definitely have to do. And I will just research something until I've removed any possible questions. I tend to do stuff in the order of what I feel comfortable with. And I think everybody else should be doing that anyway. Start small and build your little skills. It all compounds to bigger things.
I'm looking at you opening up a chimney breast, putting in a lintel, doing your gravel driveway. You're doing some really big stuff. Just looking at you doing it makes me think, okay, it's step by step, isn't it? You've got to be confident about what you're doing and then do it one bit at a time and see how you get on. It's amazing. I think it's brilliant.
It's all down to researching what method to do the job is the most comfortable for you. When I searched on widening the chimney breast, you'll go down the rabbit hole of you'll need acro props, strong buoys and acro props to prop it up. Other sources will say there's only a little pyramid of bricks that will collapse. unless you did anything major and ripped the whole lot out, your chimney and whatever supporting could collapse. Now, we're only in a bungalow. It was only a chimney that would narrow further up. There's nothing resting on that. But still, people have got to do the research. Well, what I would do is get the job planned out, and I'd go to my dad and say, this is what I'm going to do. And often he'll say, why are you doing it like that? He said, why are you bothering with acro props? It's not going to collapse. All you need to do is secure a structural piece of timber on the row above to prevent any bricks coming loose. Then you can work on the lintel underneath. And once it's in, you've packed it up and put some mortar in, it's all gone off, then you can remove that piece of timber and it'll be fine. So many people online said, that is genius. Now, I can't take credit for that. That was my dad's idea. And he said, we used to do that all the time. There's so many different ways of doing stuff. But if I was if I was a contractor working in people's home, probably would use acro props, because you don't know how good the brickwork is, particularly on a really old building. But I would probably do that for liability reasons. But then you'd have to pass on the cost to the customer. But anyway, it does get funny when they're arguing with each other.
Really? All the contractors chipping in.
Yes.
I find that really hard.
Well, I guess I wanted to ask how you managed the negativity and being a woman in the building world.
Yes.
Do you think that plays into it, or do you think it's just people who like to be grumpy?
I think you're always going to get sexism online.
Yeah.
Even in 100, 200 years, it will just be there. I don't think you can fully get rid of that. But I'm so used to doing DIY. I'm so used to being a female in a male-dominated environment that I find it makes me laugh even more now. Now I've branched out to, being addicted on Instagram. I'm sharing content on there. It's so strange and so funny to hear people just it's always the same throwaway comments, get it back in the kitchen, or, and one said, I did a dot and dab video of my archway on YouTube. For hours, I was watching plastering videos of how to finish it off, and I was really impressed how it turned out. It was better than some of the plasterers I'd had in the past. But there was one person who I blocked in the end because he started insulting my dad. He said, that's the worst job ever. Nobody followed any of these tips. And he said, I might just start opening my own hair salon. And I thought, what's a hair salon got to do with plastering? And I knew what he was trying to do. But I thought, I'll leave it there. I'll ignore him. I thought it was hilarious because I felt so great about the work. Nothing could possibly get me down. I knew I'd researched it to death by pros. And it's these things that they've never met you before. They just see a woman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I just find it amusing that I think they're just so used to seeing women. They might have seen a lot of women, try to glue a shelf to a wall. I have seen these kind of videos like, oh no, don't. Somebody said to me the other week on Facebook, the daughters or sons of a tradesperson tend to be a different breed. And you know what? I almost agree that if they've grown up with a tradesperson with a critical eye who's judgmental of that's been done wrong, you know that there's critical people out there. And so my standard of work is usually, would my dad be proud of this? With that critical eye, I think that's probably foreground training. Right from the start, I knew what people could have said, and maybe that's helped, that I've pushed myself a bit further.
But do you think it's a motivation for you?
I absolutely I've always wanted to inspire more women. I've tried with my YouTube channel as well, just to encourage everybody. But when I look at the data, the demographics on YouTube, it's 80% male.
Wow.
It's just always been like that. But the bigger I grow, I have noticed more and more women are vocal in the comments, which is great. So maybe there is more women doing it in general, or it's just because I'm noticing them more because my channel's got a bit bigger. But on Instagram, there's a lot more women on there, and I do get a lot of women contacting me with questions. So I do think it is probably the right place for me to try and appeal to more people, not just men.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Just that people get their information in a different way, and actually Instagram You're looking at nice pictures of homes and you're following beautiful accounts, and then get to the point where you want to know more. But that's a totally different audience. YouTube's beginning is, you're going there because you already know you want to do something. You're going to find out how to do it. It's a different starting point, isn't it?
Yeah. I just love that I don't just share those short little things that aren't necessarily useful, because we all start our journey in different ways. We all learn differently. So it's just nice that I've got, it's like a reference book there.
Yeah, it's like a library. There was one question I wanted to ask. Just in terms of renovating, what's your approach to budgeting? And is that another motivation for the DIY approach?
It was absolutely right from the start. But as I've gone on, my husband has been moaning, you spent £900 on tiles for this chimney breast, that kind of thing. I suppose it's less important to me at the moment because this is our third house. When we sold the first house and moved back to Doncaster, we were able to earn a bit from inflation on the property there. And then exactly the same when we sold that. So in some areas, I do feel like I've got to do some stuff on a budget. Like, because it's a renovation home, I'm not going to spend on carpets. Some people would say, I'll get temporary carpets for now. They're just going to get ruined. But I know paint is going to go all over them. So I don't spend on stuff that I know is going to get trashed. But when it comes to the end product where I want it to look good, I will spend on it. For example, the tiling the chimney breast. I want to do a job once, not twice. And I want it to be right. But I know that I'm saving money.
Yeah.
We'd already had quotes to do the chimney breast, change the layout, put the fire in. I know I'd saved maybe about £3,000 by not getting that person in.
That must be your equation every time. Like, I know I can save money if I do it myself versus getting someone else in. And then that's a bit more in your bucket to spend on the finishes, like you say. So
yes, if it's more costly for me to do something than get someone out to do it, then absolutely get someone out to do it. But occasionally there'll be something where I want to do it because I want to learn.
Is this full time for you now? How much is the time commitment for doing the stuff that you do?
Well, yes, but the annoying thing is, most of the time spent editing is trying to translate that footage into something that is understandable for people. But yeah, it's a very small percentage of actually doing the DIY, really. And you sat down, it is painful, sat down doing the edit sometimes. I was talking with my friends about it. It might take me up to 2 days to edit a video. And some of them said 2 days, because I went to them for advice of how can you get a quicker workflow? And they said, 2 days? It takes me 2 weeks sometimes. I thought, what? There's no way I would get anything done.
That's so interesting. But, you've obviously got two talents, doing the work in the first place. And then, as you say, making it understandable and thinking about how to document that in a way that other people are going to find useful. And that's another amazing skill to have.
But you get such a buzz, that adrenaline rush of doing something and seeing it work out. And when it goes wrong, it's horrible. But I've not had anything like that for ages. Thank goodness.
Do people send you their stuff that they've done? Are they like, hey, look I tiled my bathroom? Do they send you stuff back?
I get a lot of picture messages, and it used to be the same type of project. I did a raised patio step to get into my conservatory. A lot of people used to send me that, or a patio that they'd done. Just things, you've encouraged me to rip off this plasterboard and start from scratch. I got a comment yesterday, actually, that said, every time I renovate my house, I always think of you. And I thought, that's quite nice. I did think, is that creepy a little bit? But I thought, I said, I hope I'm encouraging you in your thoughts.
I bet it's just like, what would Vikkie do? You have the person in your head where you're like, what would, X person do in this situation? I bet you're that person for loads of people.
Well, I do keep the censored swearing in sometimes. I do keep those moments in, but I do have to remove. I mean, sometimes, I'm really getting angry with something. I've just got to remove that entirely and say, yeah, I struggle with this a lot. It's got to be family friendly. But you'll hear some beep sometimes if I've cut something wrong, because you've got to keep those moments in. Not everything goes hunky-dory.
It would be so frustrating to watch somebody's YouTube channel where it looks like they've done everything right first time, and then when you give it a go, it doesn't work out like that. That would be very disappointing.
Yes. And it's those moments, me telling them, don't do what I did here. those are the most enjoyable bits, you know, where TV goes wrong. And sometimes I will say to my husband, just turn the camera off. He's the cameraman sometimes. And I'll say, turn it off. And he's kept it on. And actually, I've been able to laugh at myself later on. And it's those are the moments that were really funny. You know, they helped people.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for being so generous and sharing so much.